Esau, Edom, the topic of hot debate. All right, let's start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one, pretty much, as you heard, Esau, Edom, the topic of hot debates. And pretty much, just having a little fun with the chat GPT, and just looking for a lesson to go into. And a question came to mind, so I typed it in the chat to see what the chat would say concerning the Edomites. And they're only going to give you so much. They're not going to break the scriptures down for you. They're just going to give you only enough information that's available on the web. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay. All right, so let's get to it. Here I typed in, are the Edomites described as being the wicked in the Bible? And just something else came to mind. Wait a minute. Hold it now. Just walk with me. Just bear with me. Oops. Just, out of curiosity. So we'll come back to that. So it says, are the Edomites described as being the wicked in the Bible? The question of whether the Edomites are described as the wicked in the Bible is one that has been debated in biblical studies and theology. Here's a clear summary based on the biblical texts. Historical context of the Edomites. The Edomites were descendants of Esau. Yes. The brother of Jacob. Yes. Genesis 36:1. Yep. It tells you who Esau, Edom is. That, their land is Mount Seir, Edom, that land over there. It says they were neighbors and frequent rivals of Israel. Yes. Over time, their hostility toward Israel led to prophetic condemnation. Yep. And that's why even when you read the Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, those scholars that put that together, they came to the conclusion that Esau was the only nation, or the Edomites were the only nation that didn't receive any form of mercy from the Most High. And it was, pretty much based on the fact that the Lord created them to be the wicked, created them to be destroyed. And that's pretty much the bottom line. So it says, are the Edomites called wicked in the Bible? Explicit reference to wickedness. Some passages associate Edom with evil actions or judgment, but the term the wicked, Hebrew Rasha, which is Ra'ai or Ra'aisha. There's a variation, but the evil, the word for evil, or Shalakia for wicked is Rai. It says is not always directly or exclusively applied to them. Now this is from the ESV, Malachi 1:4. If Edom says we are shattered, but we will rebuild the ruins, the Lord of hosts says they may build, but I will tear down, and they will be called the wicked country and the people with whom the Lord is angry forever. This is one of the clearest verses connecting Edom with the wicked, and that is absolutely 100% correct. And although nations are identified as being wicked because you have wicked from among them, among all nations, even including Israel, this is the only nation that was identified with being the wicked. Okay? Obadiah 1:10 through 15. This short prophetic book condemns Edom harshly for violence against Jacob, Israel. While it doesn't use the word wicked repeatedly, the actions condemned violence, betrayal, pride are clearly wicked in nature. So it's letting you know that these Edomites are the wicked. They were created to be the wicked. They were created to be destroyed. And they brought hell upon us. Even to this very day, they're still doing it. Ezekiel 35:5, because you cherished perpetual enmity and gave over the people of Israel to the power of the sword. This is part of the Most High's judgment on Mount Seir, Edom. Isaiah 34 and Jeremiah 49, these chapters describe Edom's complete desolation as part of divine wrath. And that this right here hasn't happened yet. The first step of that would be when America is totally destroyed, because this is going to be left as a memorial to what happens when people live wickedly. Just like to this day, we hear about the flood. And the reason why the Lord brought the flood, because the earth became super wicked. And how much more now? Back then it was wicked. So how much more now, all these thousands of years later? If 2,500 years ago, during the time of Ezra, the earth was super wicked compared to the beginning, how much more now, 2,500 or so years in the future, which the angel told him that was going to happen. How much wickedness it wrought from the time of Adam to the time of Ezra, and how much more wickedness until the time of the end come. And who are the main drivers behind pushing wickedness on the planet? So-called white people, these Edomites. They're the main driving force, beginning with their head of them, the small hats, Amalekites. And all these people do is wicked. It's all wickedness. So I had asked another question here. I don't know what they're going to say. Come on, man. All right, so I'll go back to this because, So it says later interpretation and symbolism. In later Israelite and Christian thought, Edom sometimes became a symbol of the enemies of the Most High. No, they were always the enemy of the Most High. Didn't we just read in Malachi chapter 1 verse 4 that these are the people whom the Lord has indignation forever, or is angry with forever? So if that's the case, they're not sometimes, they're always the enemies of the Most High. The Lord created them as such. That's why he said in Job, let's go real quick. I'm sorry, not Job. I got Job on the brain. Romans 9. Romans chapter 9 and verse 22. It says, what if the Most High, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? And these vessels of wrath fitted to destruction are the Edomites. And when you read up above this, around the tenth verse on down, it speaks about the birth of Jacob and Esau. And it speaks about how the Lord created one to be a vessel unto honor and the other one to be the vessel unto dishonor. And that vessel unto dishonor was fitted to be destroyed. So this is why the actions that they're bringing forth, even if they wanted to stop doing wicked stuff, they couldn't. That's why it says, let favor be shown to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. Why? Because they were created for the purpose of creating wickedness, stirring up wickedness, destroying the earth, because the Lord is going to destroy them. Let's go to Proverbs 16 and 4. It says, the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua had made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. Yeah. And the wicked, that's Esau, but you also have wicked among the Israelites, wicked among the nations. they're going to have their part in this lake of fire. But the ultimate wicked of the wicked are the Edomites, because once they go down, that's going to be their whole power structure coming down, because the Edomites will be the last ruling kingdom on the planet Earth. That's why Ezra said that the angel told Ezra that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All right. I had to come back to this because I'm interested to see what that says. But let's get back here. It says, in later Israelite and Christian thought, Edom sometimes became a symbol of the enemies of the Most High and even associated metaphorically with Rome or worldly opposition to the Most High. It's not metaphorically linked or associated with Rome. It is Rome, because the Greeks are Edomites. The Romans are Edomites, and there were 7 major empires of these Edomites that ruled on the planet Earth. And these are the ones that, during the time of the Renaissance came back into power and deceived the whole world. So they're in authority right now. They're the ones that have the whole world. They're the ones that are in power, global control power of all these different nations. So it says, conclusion, yes, Malachi 1 and 4, the Edomites are directly referred to as the wicked country. Other prophetic books also portray Edom's actions as wicked, justifying divine judgment. That's right. However, they are not the only people described as the wicked. Yeah, and this is just, see, this chat is like Esau. Esau is the ultimate victimizer playing the victim, or the ultimate devil in doing some wicked shit, committing a crime, but because other people do the crimes that he's committing, he'll point the finger at them. Well, they do it to each other, so that does that justify you doing it? Don't the scriptures say, follow not a multitude to do evil? And that's Esau's thing. Well, the Africans were enslaving other Africans before we started, because they don't, their spirit, their aura, their whole being is evil and wicked. And that's the same spirit that the Judite woman, I say, no disrespect to the Judites, that's why she did, this woman, this, as Elder Pastor calls them, these hyenas, that's the same way they act. No accountability. It's everybody else's fault. You see? It says, however, they are not the only people described as the wicked in the Bible, and the term is not exclusive to them. Well, it is. And although you do have Israelites and other nations that are described as being wicked, there is an identification, which we just saw up above, that is said right there. Yes, Malachi, in Malachi 1 and 4, the Edomites are directly referred to as the wicked country. So it says, over time, Edom became symbolic in some interpretations for ongoing opposition to the Most High and his people. All right, so now the next question I followed up with was the blessing of the sword given to Edom military might? Right? Yes, Esau, Edom, was indeed given a blessing involving the sword and, by extension, military might. Okay? But it came in a specific context and with important limitations. After Jacob received the primary blessing from Isaac through deception, Esau begged his father for a blessing too. Isaac's response was this. I'm going to read it in the KJV. This is the ESV, so just bear with me. This is Genesis 27 and 38. It says, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. But how is this going to be accomplished? It says, and by thy sword shalt thou live. See? So pretty much this is how you were going to live, by your sword. Because there was another follow-up question that I asked, but they didn't really tie it in, which we know dealing with Revelation 6 and verses 3 and 4 about the red horse and the great sword, and it breaks it down, right? But it says there's no association. And the only reason why they say that is because it doesn't say the name Esau or Edom in the book of Revelation 6. But it implies it by the signs or the hints of the red of being red, and also being given a great sword. All right. It says, and thou shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Right. And this took place during the time of the kings, the Judite kings, that Esau revolted from under, and they set up a kingship among them, so they had their own little realm. So let's go back. It says, analysis of the blessing. By your sword you shall live. This clearly indicates that Esau, Edom would be a warrior people. Yeah, and they are. You see that. How did they take down, Gad, Reuben, Issachar? They were out here. They were warring and painstakingly fighting against, the Israelites here. And they finally conquered. Why? Because it's in prophecy. They didn't conquer because they're not really, technically, they're not stronger than us. But the Lord stripped us of our power. And he gave Esau that sword, because that sword is what really did get in, because there were accounts, of, Gad, Esau, shooting at Gad, and Gad dodging bullets and rolling all the way up to Esau and taking their knife or whatever and gutting them, cutting them, deleting them. You see? Because Gad, they were bad. Gad, Reuben, Issachar, you're talking about guerrilla warfare. So what happened was the Lord, through the blessing of the sword, gave these devils what was known as the Gatling gun. And that Gatling gun changed the game. And it helped these devils because they couldn't win. So like the scripture said, the Lord, by thy sword shalt thou live. And that's how they lived. And they came here with the purpose of conquering and taking over the landmass that later became known as America, that the scriptures call Arsareth. Matter of fact, that's another question. Salakia, just stuff coming to mind. All right, so it says this clearly indicates that Esau, Edom would be a warrior people relying on military strength, because that's one of the things that I was, looking into, dealing with the sword. And Esau has the greatest military strength on the planet. That's why in the book of Revelation, right, chapter 13, and this conglomeration of the 7 heads and the 10 horns, these are all Edomite nations, so-called European nations. And it says here in Revelation 13 and 4, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who was able to make war with him? Yeah, because with the combination of America and NATO, America and, is it NATO? No. Yeah, America, EU, and NATO. That's a force to be reckoned with. That's why you need, superpowers like Russia and China, Iran, and India, Pakistan and all that, to join forces to stand a chance to fight against this devil. Because that was what the Lord gave them. He gave them the power of the sword, which is their military might, to conquer the whole planet. And that's exactly what they did. All right. So let's go back. It says this clearly indicates that Esau Edom would be a warrior people relying on military strength, conflict, and possibly raiding to sustain themselves. And that's it. They raided to sustain themselves. They raided the whole planet Earth. When we go to Psalms, you could go to Habakkuk. Habakkuk, the second chapter, goes in depth how this devil goes around and takes everything. Micah 2:1, he pretty much takes it by force. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's just go to Habakkuk. We'll start at 4. It says, behold, his soul, which is Esau, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Right, because they were two manner of people. You had one that were faithful, loyal, God-fearing, which are the Israelites, and you had those that were rebellious, and not obedient, and pretty much are more obedient to wickedness than they would be to righteousness. And that was the two opposite sides of the spectrum. So it says, yea, also because he transgressed by wine. What is his wine? These are his philosophies, his mode of thinking, his ideas, just in general, the ideas that he embedded on the people of the planet, the nations, their rulers. It says he is a proud man. You see that, neither keepeth at home. So you see they don't stay at home. Here it is, you have America, you have the world. The world is under your banner. The world, for decades have been under the US dollar, so on and so forth, but that's still not enough for you. Because you have 800 plus bases around the world, which now they're not telling you that they are. They're saying that it's a lot less than that, which is bullshit. They have 800 military bases around the world. They have actually 1,000, 900, 100 of them. It's like hidden but not well hidden, and then another 1,000, black sites, locations. So altogether, they have about 1,000, military bases around the world, and this is what happened with Rome. Rome was spread throughout their empire, and eventually, what happened? They had to cheapen the denarius, which caused problems because it didn't have the value that it had before. So you had to print more of it, just like here in America. You have to print more dollars, which is devaluing the original dollar that's out there. So everything parallels Rome. So these devils don't keep at home. All right? And I wasn't trying to rhyme either. Who enlarges his desire as hell. What is hell? The grave. And the grave is never full. In Proverbs, it tells you that. And is as death, right? And cannot be satisfied. So no matter what, they can't be satisfied. And how do they attain these things? Through treachery, through military power, military might, through threatening people. First, they, go in with the economic hitmen. They try to make a deal with the leaders to take a deal, to accept money from the IMF or World Bank, or however they do that particular ruler, and knowing that ruler in that country is not going to be able to pay that back, and they can indirectly go in there. And if they resist, boom, they got the military power to smash them. That's why Trump quickly dropped, a payload in Iran, and thinking that, okay, that's it, now no more, because they think that the world is how it was 100 years ago. No, the world is more sophisticated, and these nations have more sophisticated weapons. That's why it says, let the weak say I am strong. And they're a lot stronger than they were. And they have alliances that have military might and power that can rival yours. But you still have the upper hand, you Edomites. It says, but gathereth unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people. All right. And that's exactly what they do. So going back here, let's read this again. By your sword you shall live. This clearly indicates that Esau, Edom would be a warrior people, relying on military strength, conflict, and possibly raiding to sustain themselves. That's right. This aligns with what we see in later biblical history. Edom was often in conflict with Israel and other neighbors. You shall serve your brother. This goes into something else. But when you grow restless, okay, that goes into something else. This goes back into the time of the kings. Was this a blessing of military might? Yes, but with nuance. Well, it's, it just, no, it's a blessing of military might. Just that's what it is. But with the nuance, that's Esau's speech. Everything with Esau comes with, conditions. Well, yeah, you technically are right, but Esau's descendants, Edomites, were not blessed with the land's fertility as Jacob's were, but were given the sword as their way of life. Come on, man. That's what it says. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. That's where they go around conquering and to conquer. They're the conquerors of the earth. And that's why Yahushua is coming to conquer them. It's more of a harsh survivalist blessing, not a blessing of dominance or peace. It wasn't supposed to be about peace. It was supposed to be about dominance, because they have the dominant power on the earth. Matter of fact, let me just hold on to this. So it says, still, it does acknowledge that Esau's line would be strong in battle and not easily subdued forever. As we read in Revelation 13, where it speaks about who can make war with the beast. And then when we read further down into that chapter, it tells you how they dropped fire from heaven. They caused fire to come down from heaven. And what is that fire that came down from heaven? That fire that came down from heaven were those missiles. Just bear with me 1 second. I had the chat off. Salakia for that, because I was wondering why there was no comments, but I had the chat off. I was watching something last night. I turned the chat off. So it says historical fulfillment. Edom was known as a tough, mountainous people, often resisting domination. Obadiah, Ezekiel 35. They had periods of military strength and independence. Later, during the Second Temple period, the Idumean descendants of Edom had influence in Judea. Herod the Great was Idumean. Yep. Conclusion. Yes, Esau, Edom was blessed to live by the sword, which symbolizes military might and a life of conflict. While not a blessing of peace or prosperity, it acknowledged Esau's strength and the future military resistance of his descendants. So they're telling you, right? And then, I actually also asked, could the sword of Edom military might be linked directly with Revelation 6 and 4? And they say no, because Esau or Edom's name is not mentioned in there. And it's not going to always mention the Edomite name or the Edomite nation, in certain prophecies. Because remember, prophecies speak in symbolisms. Matter of fact, let me get something real quick and we'll come back to that. Let's go to Psalms chapter 49. And right, I'll start at 1. Psalms 49 and 1. Hear this, all ye people, give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline mine ear to a parable. I will open my dark sayings upon the harp. Right. So the Lord was speaking parables. There were dark sayings. That's why you have symbols. When you read about in Revelation, spoke about the white horse and the red horse. In other parts, it spoke about a beast having 7 heads and 10 horns, named it a dragon. But all of these things represent something, but it didn't always tell you what it represented. Now as far as the dragon or the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, it broke down what it was, but it didn't tell you specifically names of who exactly it was pertaining to. But we know that it was dealing with the Roman Empire was one of those heads. And that Roman Empire that same year, fell, but Jake continued on that pagan Roman rule. And it wasn't until about 325 AD or so that, the Holy Roman Empire started taking over. All right? So it's not going to mention, because if it was that clear, cut and clear, the Lord, these devils would have been got rid of the Bible. And now that is coming out, now they're looking to, ban certain scriptures, ban certain things you said you can't, you got to speak in code. Some brothers could say MOTB the whole thing and micro C-hip the whole thing, and their channel won't get clipped. But others, they'll say those things and boom, video's gone. So, so I got that. So symbolisms, okay? So I said, could the sword of Edom military might be linked directly with Revelation 6:4? That's a deep and intriguing question. Whether the sword of Edom symbolizing military might or warlike nature could be linked to Revelation 6:4, which describes the second horseman of the apocalypse. Let's examine the passage and then look at whether there's biblical or theological basis for directly linking it to Edom. This is ESV. And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth. And did not Esau take peace from the earth? This is not a peaceful world, inside joke. Esau took peace from the earth. So how could they not be this red horse? And I was going to ask, which I didn't, I was going to ask, could there be a correlation between the color red and the name Edom in Revelation 6 and 4? Which I didn't do that, but, that's, these are symbols. Remember, when we reading this in Revelation 6, this is an actual prophetic, a prophetic vision. And it represents something. It says, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. And come on, man, who does that fit? That don't fit anybody else. Because what other nation on the planet has control of the whole entire planet? And what other nation on the planet Earth is going around bombing people and destroying and taking and conquering and, colonizing other nations, exploiting them for their resources and for their lands and for their labor? So it says key themes: red horse, often symbolizing bloodshed or war. Yep. It is also symbolizes Esau, because the name Edom goes back to the Hebrew word adawam, which means red. Takes peace from the earth, sparks conflicts and civil strife. Come on, man. The situation that was provoked over there in the so-called Middle East with Iran, with the small hats, what they did. They provoked, they sparked that conflict, and they provoked this civil strife. And that's what they do. When they went to Afghanistan, when they went to Iraq, when they went to Vietnam, when they went to Korea, so on and so forth. All of these different wars. Like Michael Rivero said, all wars are bankers' wars. And that's true. And the bankers are Amalekites. Given a great sword represents military power, violence, or divine permission to bring judgment through war. And that's why they say what? They say manifest destiny, right? Let me just type that in here. Let me just put the whole thing in. Manifest destiny definition. There we go. Manifest destiny is a 19th century belief that American settlers were destined to expand westward across North America, coined by journalist John L. O'Sullivan in 1845. It encapsulated the idea that the United States was destined to spread its dominion and promote democracy and capitalism across the continent. This ideology played a significant role in the territorial expansion of the United States, including the annexation of Texas and the Mexican-American War. Come on, man. So, given a great sword represents military power, violence, or divine permission to bring judgment through war. And that's exactly what happened, because they are the sword of the Lord. Let's go to Psalms 17. We're just going to go straight to the point. And 13. Arise, O Lord, Yahweh Bashem El Shai, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which are the Edomites, which is thy sword. So they are the sword of the Lord. From men which are thy hand, O Lord, Yahweh Bashem El Shai, from men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. They are full of children, and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. Yeah, because they done stole everything. So they can leave, generational wealth to their, descendants, or to their, offspring, and the future, also in the future. But now Yahushua is coming to take that all back, because Yahushua gave Esau the blessing of the sword as Isaac, and he's going to take it back as Yahushua when he comes back. Ain't that something? Ooh, it says possible connection to Edom. Edom's association with the sword, as we saw in Genesis 27:40, Esau, Edom is told, by your sword you shall live. There is a clear and early biblical link between Edom and military life. Come on, man. Edom's symbolic role as an enemy of the Most High's people. Edom is frequently portrayed in the prophets as an enemy of Israel and the object of divine judgment. Yeah, Obadiah, Isaiah 34, Ezekiel 35. Yeah, perfect. In later Israelite and Christian apocalyptic traditions, Edom sometimes becomes symbolic of world powers opposed to the Most High. And they are a world power. That's why it says Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. In Israelite writings, even Rome was symbolically equated with Edom, right? Because the Romans were or are Edomites, just like the Greeks, just like the Spanish, just like the French, just like the British, just like the Germans. All right? It says the sword in Revelation, the great sword given to the red horseman in Revelation 6:4 is not tied to a specific nation or figure in its text, right? But check it out. Let's go back. Let's go to it. Revelation 6:4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. So who are the people that are in control and in power? And since they've been in control, what have they been doing? Creating wars, conflicts, wickedness, destroying people, militarily occupying people's lands, intervening in affairs of the world that is none of their concern, taking resources and lands and the labor of people. And they took peace from the earth. There's no peace in this earth. Since America's been in power, there's a handful of years A couple of handfuls of years that they haven't been at war. Since they began, the majority of time that America has been in power, they've been at war. There's only very few, very few years, of so-called peace in America. So everything ties together, but you're not going to see it written like that, because the scriptures are written symbolically, parabolically, but a parable is symbolic of something. When Yahushua cursed them wicked Pharisees and Sadducees and them out, right? He spoke to them in parables. And there was one point they said, wait a minute, sound like this parable, he's talking about us. And he was. But he didn't speak directly about them, even though that's who he was pointing to. And that's how we spoke most of the time, through parables. So the scriptures are parabolic, symbolic, but they mean something, especially the prophetic scriptures. And that's why these so-called scholars can't break down Revelation and certain parts of even Daniel, because they don't have the insight of the Holy Spirit to be able to see, and understand what they really mean. And they're appalled that a bunch of nobodies that they consider to be niggas and spicks and spooks and all of that, wetbacks and all that, that they can actually have more understanding of the Bible than any of them combined, without having to pay all that exorbitant amount of money. Because they can't get the breakdowns of Revelation. They don't know who the beast is with 7 heads and 10 horns. And if they do, they ain't talking about it. They wouldn't dare talk about it. Why? Because it's not accepted text by this plantation Christian, gatekeeping that has been put in place. You dig? So let's go back. So it says, it's a universal symbol of violence and divine judgment, not directly attributed to Edom or any specific people group. Right, but who are the people today that are in power that are causing all of these things to happen? Because the book of Revelation is a prophetic book. It's a book of the end. So who would be these people, or who are the people today that symbolize this, or that are in this power seat militarily, terrorizing the world, taking peace from the earth? Who is it? It's not the Arabs. It's not the East Indians. It's not the Chinese. It's not the Japanese. It's not the Africans. It's the Edomites, so-called white people. They're the ones, that the ones that are in power taking, a peace from the earth. Can we make a theological link? Thematic parallel, yes. See? The idea of living by the sword, Edom, and the red horsemen causing war both represent violence and military conflict as forces under the Most High's judgment. That's right. Direct prophetic link? No, right, because it's not going to directly link it and say Edom, because it's symbolic. That's why you have the word red in there. That's why the beast is scarlet or a red beast. Because these are symbols of who it represents. And if it was straightforward, it wouldn't be a mystery. So it says, the text of Revelation doesn't directly mention Edom or Esau. The red horse represents global unrest. And who are the people today causing global unrest? Not a specific ethnic group or nation. Yeah, and it is a specific ethnic group or nation today, beginning with the small hats, which are the head of the Edomites. Don't matter if they have puppet rulers among the other nations helping them with this shit. They're the ones that are calling the shots. They're got the final say. And what happens if any of these rulers get uppity? They rub them out. Symbolic typology, advanced view. Some interpreters in Israelite apocalyptic or early Christian traditions symbolically link Edom with Rome because they are Rome, and Rome with the enemies of the Most High, and they are enemies. So are the Greeks, the actual Greeks, Edomite Greeks. If one follows this line, the sword of Revelation could symbolically reflect Edom-like characteristics: oppression, war, enmity with the saints. But this is interpretive, not explicit in Scripture. And it is explicit in Scripture because it tells you all of these things that Esau did and how they lived by the sword and things that they did. But in the book of Revelation 6, it's not going to come straight out and say it's talking about the Edomites. Conclusion: while thematic parallels exist between the sword of Edom, Genesis 27:40, and the sword of the red horseman, Revelation 6:4, especially around military power and conflict, there is no direct biblical link between Edom and the red horseman. They are known as the wicked. They are known as red. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. The people that are in control today are the so-called white people, the Edomites. They're not really white, they're red. So on all levels, everything points to them. They are the last rulers. We see the technological age that it has advanced. We see all of the prophecies popping off. So we know that Yahushua is on his way. And we know that the last rulers on the planet Earth would be the Edomites before the Lord got here. So if Esau that's in power today, if they're not the Edomites, then that means we got a long way to go. Because we got to wait till the Edomites get in power and do all of the things that these individuals are doing now, and then the end will come. Because Esau is the end of the world. But they don't want to touch it. It's a hot potato topic. Like here it says, Esau, Edom, the topic of hot debates. So it says, however, if you're exploring typological or symbolic interpretation, Edom as a prototype of rebellious nations that live by war could be seen as a spiritually echoed in the judgment themes of Revelation. You know? And then I typed in, of course, are the Edomites still around today? Of course, they're gonna say no. No, and then I followed it up with another question, but they weren't trying to hear it, you know. And the Edomites are still around today, to this very day. All right. Let me see something. All right, I got to come back to this because. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom. And to water for all the comments, you brothers, scriptures.